Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome, everyone. I guess the Middle East situation continues to evolve and get worse and worse. I did have a dream about it that I will write up and send it out to people who are interested. However, I think last week's talk gave you the deepest understanding. The dream is still at the level of what we call in Islam asbab, the causes, but the ultimate cause, the musabib al asbab, is Allah. So everything that's happening, it looks terrible, but everything that's happening is from the order of Allah. It's what people have brought on themselves on all sides of the matter. So anyone who takes sides unilaterally is missing the point, is not understanding what's going on the deepest level. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, which is a segue into this session. I always forget my timer. This session, which is going to be in two parts. The first part, related to last week's talk, is that things are not what they seem to be on the earth plane. Okay? One of the problems we have with what's going on in the Middle East is everyone thinks that what they're seeing is the only thing going on, and they're wrong. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples, interesting examples that have happened in my journey about this question. The first one, before I was Muslim, I wasn't even with the Universal Sufis yet. I went to visit Krishnamurti in Ojai, California. And there I met a man, an American guy. You know, we call him American Joe. Ordinary American guy. You know, my first American Joe was part of an essay I wrote on Socrates that my philosophy professor didn't like at all. Because I found that when Socrates, all the people he was interacting with, they were very passive. They were too agreeable. They were like doormats. And I said, I want someone who's going to argue back to him. So I wrote an essay of Socrates' dialogue with American Joe. And I got a pretty bad mark. My professor didn't like this idea. I guess maybe he thought I was being snotty to one of his great heroes or something. But this is number 2, American Joe. I meet at Krishnamurti, and I say to the guy, what are you doing here? You don't look like... This wasn't one of these new age people with dreadlocks and whatever, tie-dyed shirts. And no. This was a typical American. I'm not even sure what his profession was. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I'll tell you my story. I'm a veteran of the Korean War. He said, forgot to look at the camera again. I'm a veteran of the Korean War, and we were in the trenches. It was the most ugly thing you could imagine. There was blood and guts and mud, and it was dead bodies all around me. Absolutely abysmal. And in the middle of this horrible situation, I got shot by an artillery shell that landed in my side. Most excruciating pain I've ever experienced. But at the moment that the shell penetrated my body, I was lifted out of my body into another war. But this one was a celestial cosmic war. It was something very positive, something very beneficial on some level, something, I guess the modern lingo would say, awesome experience. And he said, it was so impactful that I've spent the last, now we're in 1973, Korean War, 1953, spent the last 20 years trying to discover that state of that cosmic battle. He said, that's why I'm with Krishnamurti. He said, when I woke up, I was in such pain I couldn't even think, let alone do anything. But gradually I healed slowly, but I didn't heal from that celestial experience. So I'm still seeking for it now. That's why I came here. Unfortunately, I didn't keep up contact with this man, but very interesting story. Number one. Number two story, I may have mentioned it to some people in other talks. There's a story about a Vietnam War veteran who was responsible, according to him, for a massacre in one of the villages in Vietnam. Maybe it was the My Lai disaster, but one of those. And he was convinced he had been responsible for maybe 120, 130 deaths. And after the war, he felt, not only did he have PTSD, but he had this incredible guilt and depression that he never recovered from. And then he had his NDE. And in the NDE, he met the souls of the people that he had killed, and they were all thanking him. Thank you so much. We're in such a better place now than we were on earth. Oh, thank you, sir. You did us a good deed. It's the opposite of what the rational, reasonable people would think. He massacred people, and they're thanking him for where they are. If you take this stuff seriously, and I do, and as Muslims and believers we're supposed to know, al-akhirah khayr min al-ula, the other side is much better than this side. So they were in a better place. Okay. That's incident 2 of It's Not What It Seems. The third one comes from Sheikh Nazim. He said he was on a Hajj with his grand Sheikh, Abdullah, and everyone for the Hajj's pilgrimage, and there's some people who get very pushy and boisterous, especially certain countries that we won't name, but they get very pushy, and everyone was disrespectful and misbehaving. And one of the Murids went up to Grand Sheikh and says, what is going on? This is supposed to be Hajj. This is supposed to be a holy activity. Look how the people are behaving. And Grand Sheikh pointed up in the sky. And he said, look up there. And when they looked up there, they saw all these angelic beings doing the tawaf. The tawaf is the circumambulation of the Kaaba. And it was, again, a transcendent, holy beatitude when they looked up and saw this. Things are not what they appear to be. Okay, that's the take-home lesson from these short incidents. And you can think about many other things in your life where things may not be what they appear to be. But just if you can't see them, just keep an open mind. It might not be what you think. You know, just like those angels in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah, how could you create these terrible people, those ones now in Middle East? How could you create these terrible, vicious people in the Middle East on both sides? Oh, Allah, the angel said, and Allah said, I know what you know not. There's a positive plan, a positive scenario working itself out that you only know about most on the other side. You won't know on this side in most cases. Okay, so that's the number one part of this talk. But the thing that I really wanted to try to cover this time was one of the issues. It's all related. It's related to those terrible people. And the issue here is, what is the nature of man? Because in Islam we have this teaching, and the teaching is called Husn Adhan. It means you have to have a good opinion. That's what it means. But many of the scholars have said you have to have a good opinion of God, of Allah, and a good opinion of man. I go 100% along with a good opinion of God. A good opinion of man, whoa, wait a minute. Actually, when you hear these statements in the Quran, you'll see that having a good opinion of man means you're arguing with Allah, because Allah's opinion is not very positive about man. There are some positive things. We'll cover them next week, okay, to put everything in perspective. But if you start going through the Quran and studying it like our group is doing, you'll see Allah is criticizing, dissing man over and over and over and over again. And we're going to go through some of those ayats. Pardon my Arabic if it's not perfect tajweed, but I like to say it anyway in Arabic, and then we'll translate everything. So first we'll start with, this is Surah 18, ayat 54. Wakana al-insanu akthar shay jadalan. And what this means is, more than anything else, man is argumentative and disputatious. Ever notice? Is arguing with God all the time. How could you create? You're a compassionate God. How could you create all this misery and suffering? Man has no problem arguing with God, let alone with his neighbor. Now, of course, the Middle East gives everyone wonderful food to argue about everything. The Palestinians did this, and the Israelis did that, and the Americans did this, and we're disputing with all of them. When I went to McGill, I was part of a debating society. It was considered, a great activity to go out and argue with people, just like that. One of my, brings back a memory. One of my daughters, I think it was my middle one actually, was really good at argumentation. And one day I was kind of struck, not angry, but just amazed. I said, Amina, where did you get so good at argumentation? She said, oh, we have an activity that we do at recess time where we do, I'm trying to remember the term she used. Do you remember the term? No. Well, basically, we learn to, what? Réplique. Thank you. You got it. We have an activity we do on our own at recess time. Réplique. Réplique in French means we respond. We argue back. We practice arguing back. We didn't have that in my day. You had to be in the debating society to argue back. But they're practicing in their daily life, and they're good at it. The kids nowadays, they can argue back, astaghfirullah. They can argue back to their parents about anything, and they're sure they're right. More than anything else, man is disputatious. Okay. Take note. So don't blame people for being disputatious. Now we see in the American Congress, these people, they're proud of it. Oh, we have an adversarial system. And they think it's great. Our judicial system is adversarial. Our legal system is, well, that's the same. Our government is, everything is adversarial. And they think it's terrific. Well, watch what's going on in the House of Representatives. They can't even elect a leader because everyone wants to dispute. This is one of the big, this will take down America more than almost anything else, more than Iran and Russia and China, is this adversarial system where people always have to dispute. And if you get into that mindset, you can never see the truth. You only see what your side of the debate is. Okay, let's see some of the other wonderful characteristics of man. 3372. Wal insanu inahu kana dhaluman jahulan. So once again, this wonderful man, he's also oppressive. Dhulm means oppression and wrongdoing. So he's oppressive, he's wrongdoing, and he's ignorant on top of it. Great guy to have a good opinion of. Huh? Ever noticed people like that? They oppress others when they get a chance. They're ignorant on most things. If you watch sometimes, it's funny actually, if you watch, who does it? Fox News, I think. They interview people. They're based in New York. They go around interviewing people. What do you know about this? What do you know about that? It's amazing. They don't even know their own American history. They barely know who the vice president is of their country. Except she's been a bit of a laughingstock, so now she's in the news a lot. They know nothing about nothing. There was a Canadian journalist who used to go to America, and he would say things to them. In Montreal, they're just getting out of their igloos now at this time of year. And the American student, this is on a U.S. university campus. They say, "Oh, okay. It's sorry to hear that they have such a cold winter there." Or he would say, "And our Prime Minister Putin," and they would say, "Oh, Putin, we've heard some good things about him." And the level of ignorance is just astounding. But it's not only in America. It's not only. If you study the slightest amount about the Middle East and the conflict, you'll see that what a lot of people are saying, a lot of it's based on ignorance. Because if you know enough, you just throw your hands up and say, this is like too much. But if you know very little, then you can take one side and, denounce the other side and support your side. But if you know enough, silence is almost the only thing, and sadness that you can feel. So surely, because it starts with inahu, which means in Arabic, which puts emphasis, surely man is wrongdoing and foolish. Ina 2266. Ina al insana la kafur. Surely man is lacking in gratitude. I tell the story one time of a patient, female patient, they found something on the mammography, and she was really worried about it, and they said, "We don't know, we're going to have to do a biopsy. This is the sequence for breast tumors." So they found something in the mammography, they did a biopsy, and she came to my office and she was in a complete state. She said, "I have cancer, I'm dying, I won't be there to raise my children, this is a catastrophe." I said, "Well, most of these are not cancerous. I think recently I read that less than 20% are cancerous, even when they find the mass, maybe even less." So I said, "Well, let's not jump to, no, I'm finished, it's over, my kids won't have a mother, this is the end of my life." Okay. So I try to calm her down. We finished the session. A week later, she comes back, and she's complaining that her husband doesn't do the dishes. Or he leaves his socks on the floor, or whatever other complaint that I hear often enough. And I'm scratching my head. I'm trying to think back. Maybe I forgot to read the notes or something, which I usually did before sessions, and I'm scratching my head and said, 1 second, 1 minute here. Last week you were dying, and now you're worrying about dishes? What happened with that? The biopsy was... I'm thinking now, wow, they got the biopsy results in a week. Then, nowadays you can wait 6 weeks, 2 months. She said, the biopsy was negative. It's okay. I said, "So you're going to live?" She said, "Yeah. And you're going to be there for your children?" I said, "Yeah." So I said, "How about expressing a little gratitude?" "No, my husband, he's such a slob. He always leaves his socks on the floor and the dishes undone." This is what Allah means. Surely man, and he includes women in there, is ungrateful. Let's see some of his other great characteristics. 96:6. Kala ina al-insanu yatga. Now, tagha, this is a very Arabic kind of word. It can be translated a number of ways. Tyrannical, cruel, overstepping all limits, like we just saw, on one side, on both sides, but some of those terrible things that Hamas did, overstepping all limits. I was speaking to a politician today. I said, "Tell the people," he's Muslim, "tell the people Islam does not condone this. This is not the sunnah of our prophet." He said, "I can't talk about religion." Religion, surely man is cruel, tyrannical, and goes beyond all limits, even the limits of the religion that he says he's practicing and believing in, and trying to promote beyond the limits in that. And it's not the first time, and it's not the only religion that does that, read the Crusades if you need a Christian example. Wakana al-insanu ujulan, 1711. Here Allah talks about man being hasty, impatient, agitated. Ever notice? Know any people like that?
No.
Some of them are ADD and some of them aren't even ADD, but they're agitated. I call it the Manhattan syndrome. You know, go to Manhattan at lunchtime. I don't know about now, but used to be. And everyone's running around. Hey, do you have any lunch ready for me? Well, it's going to take 10 minutes. Oh, I don't have time for 10 minutes. Goodbye. And to the next restaurant. Because he needs it immediately. Agitated. Oh, yeah, my favorite example of that hasty, impatient man. I'm going to Florida. And we stop in Chicago. No, 1 second. Or maybe we're in Florida. No, I think we're in Florida. And via Chicago. There's a man from Chicago, and I'm renting a car. We're going down to, I think I was going down to Pir Vilayat Khan's seminar, meditation seminar. And there's a man there from Chicago who's railing at the rental agent. I asked for a Chrysler and you only gave me a Chevrolet. And the lady's saying, it's the same size, sir. It has all the same accoutrements. It has all the same features. No, you promised me a Chrysler. I don't want a Chevrolet. I was looking, these people are crazy. You know, he had a perfectly good car, just the exact same. It wasn't exactly the mark that he had ordered. And he's flipping out. Maybe some of the car levels will tell me why that the Chrysler is so much better than the Chevrolet. I couldn't get it. Surely man, wakana al-insanu katuran. Okay, another great quality of man. He's cheap. He's miserly. Ever notice? I think if we didn't have this level of cheapness, China would go bankrupt. And we'd say, oh, I can get this Chinese product where the screws unthread, where the cable is so short that you have to get an extension cable to put it in. But the Chinese product is cheaper. I had one lady, didn't end well for this lady, unfortunately. She would go around to 7 or 8 different grocery stores to do her weekly shopping because she wanted to get the broccoli where it was the cheapest at this one and the rice where it was the cheapest at that one, and she would get all these folders that were advertisements and she'd find out where each one was cheaper, and she'd shop at 7, 8 different grocery stores for her weekly shopping. Imagine. In the end, she saved a few dollars. But surely man is cheap, stingy. Not everyone, but as a general tendency. Surely man is created hulika, 7019, hulika haluan. Okay, here man is anxious. This is not agitated like the other one, ajulan, but haluan, meaning that he's anxious, restless, mal à l'aise, the opposite of what our prophet prayed for, afia, inner peace. So surely man is restless, anxious, insecure. Ever noticed? I think our Western society produces even more insecurity, despite all the wealth and everything. People are anxious. And then, the culmination, wa khulika al-insanu daifan. Daifan means weak. Boy, are we weak. You know, how anyone could think, even Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's getting old. I'm sure he's getting weaker. But the weakness is still there. One traffic accident, your life can be destroyed. You know, there's the story in some of the biblical stories of Nimrod, who was persecuting Abraham, alayhi salam, and he got a little insect in his ear. and somehow it went inside the ear. They couldn't get it out, and it was driving him crazy. And in the end, he beat his head so hard that he killed himself from a little insect this size that worked. This is how weak we are. I heard a recent story about there's a kind of mold that goes to the brain, and these people, they didn't even realize they were picking it up. It went by the nostril into the brain, reproduced, and killed them. From a mold that they had picked up maybe from the earth or maybe from some surface. So we saw this in COVID also, although COVID is not the worst virus. We saw people knocked out for days, for weeks, by a little virus that you need an electron microscope to see. That's how weak we are as men. So, what do we do with this? First of all, we don't deny it. We acknowledge the inherent weakness in mankind, and also we feel compassion for people. Even if we ourselves are strong temporarily, we feel compassion for the weak, for the poor, for the sick, because this is our nature. Man is made weak. We're here, at best, we're here for a certain period of time. Some people have relatively good health, and then they fall into sickness, old age and sickness and death. No reason for man to be proud and arrogant with this kind of station. Okay? Now, this doesn't mean we should look down on people. Okay, we'll talk about the right attitude next time, when we also bring up some of the more positive attributes of man that God has given us. Someone this week sent me a text from a philosopher, astronomer named Hubert Reeves, who was saying essentially what a lot of intellectuals say, that man is just the same as all the other creatures, is just part of Earth, the same way an insect or an animal or a microbe is part of Earth. We're all part of the same thing. And that's wrong too, because man has a very special position, and we'll look into that special position next week. And after that, we'll try to look at what's the right way, what's the right attitude relative to people. And contempt is not the right conclusion here. Compassion may be, and many other things. And we have to be aware of our own weakness, our own foolishness, our own cruelty, all of these things. By working on ourselves, by doing jihad nafs, by working on our ego, trying to attenuate it, we become aware of our own limitations, and then we can attain real humility rather than arrogance that we can see all around us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.